know me, I'm Steve. I'm the MD of Executive Connexions. We're a career coaching company. We also work with a fair bit of outplacement work where companies are making people redundant. We sort of interact with a lot of HR people also, sometimes on these calls and sometimes following these kind of calls. Been going for well over 10 years now. I've been involved personally in coaching and career guidance and that whole kind of subject for much longer than that. From working in schools and colleges to universities, right through now to working with senior level executives and people maybe not quite at that level also. But we work across a broad range geographically. And the coaching team is sort of spread evenly among many different countries throughout the regions I've described there. So just lastly on this one, the series has been, we started off on CV. We did the entire session around CVs. We then did one on the hidden jobs market, personal branding, networking, job interviews, many different subjects. You can imagine the scenario. So what we're going to do today is just put sort of a potted session together. Just so you know, we sort of exist in the real world as well. This isn't all theoretical. We've got many people, only 6 of which we could squeeze onto one slide there. So you're welcome to have a look at those. There's plenty more testimonials on the website as well. But there are people that have gone through the process with us and have happily sort of come out the other side. So this toolkit, this executive job search toolkit, there's lots of different elements to it. And I think that what will happen is that people will sometimes neglect certain aspects and will focus on other aspects. And I think that have a kind of a reflection as we're talking here and think, are there any aspects that you are not focusing so much on that you could be doing more with? I mean, before I even get into any of that, and this has become more prevalent, I suppose, post COVID, lots of mergers and acquisitions and reorganizations and redundancies and lots of different aspects of business that have changed. And it's not just ghosting that's become more prevalent. I'm sure you all experienced that to some degree or other. There are lots of different areas of business that have changed, and it just requires that everyone has revisits, I would say, that whole aspect of resilience and mindset. I came across a phrase the other day when it says they learn from setbacks. Setbacks are just setups to comebacks. Yes, I said it right. Okay. So if you remember that one, great, but think about it in that way. There's always a positive spin that you can put on things. However, it's in many ways in a short session like this, it's easier said than done. And we're very mindful that mental health, well-being, resilience is something that's worth talking about openly and honestly during a career coaching or outplacement engagement, because it's easy to just launch into, okay, let's look at your CV. Okay, let's look at, and get all those kind of assets on the table and discussed. But it's very important for you to be strong and positive, whether you practice mindfulness, you go out for walks in the country, if you've got that facility near to you, meditation, whatever it is, I think those aspects are increasingly more important. So I mentioned that at the outset because I think it's an overarching theme in a lot of things, certainly a lot of the work that we do anyway. And I think it's become more prevalent over the past couple of years that this kind of the feeling of not being resilient is manifesting itself more. So one of the many sort of favorite subjects, the hidden jobs market. So what is it all about? Essentially, I would summarize it as people that you don't yet know, opportunities you don't yet know. So how do you access these? And I think that essentially you've got to step outside that box of just thinking about advertised roles, whether you're primarily focusing on LinkedIn advertised roles, whether you're looking at the various jobs boards that relate to your own sector, or whether you're doing it in some other way through a few recruiter contacts, perhaps, which is all great and they're all highly relevant. But the hidden market can be a number of different things. And aside from what we've got down here about strengthening your networking approach, doing more networking, speaking to people, and people love to tell you about their role and they love to tell you about what they're doing in their company. So you're seeking advice, and that advice is a key word. It's kind of a trigger word in many ways. If people are asked, I really appreciate your advice about something, then often that sort of triggers them to be helpful. I don't see that as being manipulative, but you're just setting up the scene. you're looking to learn about that role, that organization, maybe it's an organization you're looking to network your way into. And industry events, we've had people on these calls before that will attend lots of industry events very specific to their own sector as well, and find them valuable. I know people's experiences will be different around networking events, and there are obviously a whole host of remote networking events that are available now. We can almost be like drinking from a fire hose sometimes. So maybe step back and be very selective about what you're doing. So to me, the hidden jobs market is about putting yourself out there a bit more, networking more, using LinkedIn as a tool, posting, liking, sharing, commenting, getting across more people's radar. That's a phrase I'll ask you to take on board as well. That's all you're doing this for. Many people are reticent because they don't want to be seen to be that person. Oh, look at me. It isn't about that on LinkedIn. It's about you being your best and authentic self. If you put a post out there, it's about something that you're an authority in, and you can keep it as business as you like. You don't have to show the kind of personal stuff, the Insta stuff, the Facebook stuff, whatever people criticize about LinkedIn sometimes. Keep it to what you want it to be used for, and it will benefit you. So try to explore the hidden market. We've got, by the way, PDF giveaways and other resources on any of these subjects that we're going to cover here today. So feel free to pop a note in the chat, and Dorcas will pick that up, and we'll get some information out to you in any case, which will expand on things. And obviously, we can have a one-to-one conversation at any point as well. Again, there will be some links in the chat. One of them will be if you're in a job search currently, and one of them will be for HR practitioners looking to have a discussion with us as well. So generally, job search skills. What are job search skills? I talk to people about engaging in this kind of mini MBA, that whatever period of your life you're in, and you're searching for a role here, and you're going to get the role there, it's just around exactly what skills you need to adopt, and adopt quite quickly. And defining your goals is really important. You've probably heard of, Simon Sinek's Start with Why, or Start with Your Why, the book. It's also about you defining your goals. Sometimes things will just happen. You'll maybe put the green banner on LinkedIn, which is fine, by the way. You'll start getting some approaches from recruiters, and then you may just start to get taken down the path of roles that maybe they're not quite on target, or maybe you're in a bit of a panic because you're not in work at the moment. Don't want to get too lofty about that. I appreciate the situations that people can be in, but think about what your goals are. Write them down, and write down what kind of role you're looking for, what kind of organization, what are your non-negotiables, what are your negotiables, a job description for your next stage, if you will. On the researching companies, this is something that sometimes we can help people if our clients are proactive about it, and if they say to us, look, Steve, there's half a dozen companies that I really would like to network my way into, but I don't know anybody there. Do you happen to know anybody at company XYZ? And if we know someone, then we will try to make that introduction. This is the kind of thing that you can do yourself as well. Think about expanding your networks. The best roles, it's going back to the hidden jobs piece again, really, that the best roles are often just outside of your existing network. That's the rationale for regularly reaching out, having a target, 5, 10, 50 new connect requests every week. However, we're using LinkedIn again here. And just make sure that you have a plan for it, and you track your application. I mean, there are apps out there. There are obviously, LinkedIn will enable that kind of tracking for you as well. Not in any way affiliated to LinkedIn, by the way, but it's just such a monster in the job search world that it comes up over and over. But there are other apps out there that can help you track your progress if you're not into creating spreadsheets. I know the CFOs out there will be fine with that. I've seen them, all the lovely color-coded spreadsheets, and that's great to keep track of what's happening when you do to have a follow-up call, whatever it might actually be. Probably a big subject, and it's a subject that I think people hide in sometimes. What do I mean by that? There's a compelling CV, and there's probably a better CV than the one you've got at the moment. But is there the perfect CV? I don't think there is. I think there's a lot of different points of view about a CV and what makes the best format, layout. How do you kind of navigate the applicant tracking systems and all of it? There is a lot of conversation and a lot of resource that you can use. I would just ask you not to sort of hide behind that as a strategy for not doing other things that are more uncomfortable, like the networking, accessing the hidden jobs market. Yep, you need a CV. In my own view, doesn't need to be 2 pages. It could be, 3 or thereabouts. For someone who's had a substantial career, then you'd almost expect it to be. If you're going to be using a nice, decent 11-point font, something like that, nothing showy, no fancy formatting. That's the feedback that we tend to get from senior level recruiters. Certainly, when we've engaged in independent research on this subject, and that's what's come back to us. Just plain formatting, nothing fancy, readable. Lots of pounds or dollars or euro signs, lots of percentages, things that are really going to grab the eye. But anyway, as ever, on the screens, I'm talking to you without necessarily addressing the points that are on there, but I think you can cover most of these yourself. And I think that the tailoring part, yeah, there is a school of thought for that, but often the recruiter and or the headhunter will want to do that with you anyway. So what you want to achieve in the end is something you're happy with as a holding pattern document that you can just adjust as you need to, but you're not going to spend forever, agonizing over it and spending weeks and weeks trying to research and Google and Chat GPT and all the rest of the AI facilities to actually try and achieve this magical document, because it will always be changing and recruiters might want to change it anyway. So get something that works and start with the networking, start with the thought leadership, the personal branding, the hidden jobs pieces. That will take you further down the path. This recording will be sent out to you, by the way, if you've got any other thoughts or you want to just revisit some of this. And I mentioned this just now, and obviously it keeps coming up, but LinkedIn is, 1 billion or close on users. So what's your profile like? I mean, is it worth revisiting your profile? Does your photograph represent you, or is it something, 10 or 15 years ago? Obvious, but I've seen those profiles. The background image you can use on LinkedIn, just to try and hold the eye on your profile a bit more. That's the reason to have that updated. The background image could be something that is special to you, a special location, a piece of scenery, or it could be something that you get created by somebody on Fiverr.com or somewhere like that you can create a bespoke LinkedIn background that will, have wording and logos and perhaps other things that you've achieved. You've got yourself standing at a lectern, bit cliched maybe, but whatever is your particular brand, use that background image and it will sort of keep people on your profile for that split second longer, which is really, really, really important. Having a great profile is one thing, but the work really starts with the middle point. In my view, it's about engaging your network and having a strategy for making sure you send out enough connect requests every day, that you're saying something on that connect request that's not pushy, needy, salesy, desperate. Just a general, polite, business-like connect request. Maybe you'll allude with that person to something that you feel aligned on from their profile, because you will have read their profile before you send the connect request, and keep it sort of as personalized as you can. Some people believe in this hyper personalization, where you will go through and say, oh, we went to the same university together, or we share a hobby, or however deep you want to go into that. I think that's down to you and what feels comfortable to you. But suffice to say, it's a monster in terms of its use, in terms of attracting opportunities to you. And I put it in that way specifically because I'm harking back again to the hidden jobs piece, where yes, apply for advertised roles. Yes, the quick apply is great. You can put things on your spreadsheet or your app and it looks great. Writing articles or writing regular posts a couple of times a week, that's a bit more hard. That's a bit harder work, I think, for a lot of people, and it will seem less tangible for many people as well, because there's a timeline to these things. you're not necessarily going to write one post and get tons of people liking it and commenting and getting a non-executive director of a company that you fancy the look of at the company. I mean, to actually come through to your profile and say, hey, Steve, yeah, I've been looking for somebody with your background, actually. Can we have a chat? Now, I'm not being flippant about that. That's the kind of mindset to have about posting and commenting and having people find you and drawing people to you. It is possible to do that, but you need to be proactive in terms of what you're doing on LinkedIn, not just having a great profile and just sitting back and going, great, bring it on. You've actually got to do something else, to actually attract that traffic. So on the job interview itself, I was just thinking as I clicked on this then that, we've had feedback in the past for people before they were clients of ours, I hasten to add, but where they've fallen over at interview by giving generic answers. Just to throw a quick tip out there in terms of answer style, that, you want to have stories, you want to have examples, you want to have those arrows that you can pull from your quiver and fire off as appropriate during an interview. So if someone asks you about, how would you describe your leadership style? Oh, so it's a bit more of a soft skill, it's a bit more emotional intelligence based kind of question, but they are things to think about, and they are things that often throw people in the particularly at senior level. They've got their technical questions and answers rehearsed and practiced. They're bringing the best version of themselves, but they're neglecting to sort of have that piece where, yes, it's got to be structured, it's got to be deliverable, it's got to be compelling, and importantly, it's got to be a real, believable, punchy example. And yeah, I've said about practice there, actually. And the one thing I would add to that, I'm always reminded of someone on one of these calls, actually, who said, I do believe in what you're saying there about practicing and your answers and practicing your responses aloud so that you get used to the sound of your own voice. Otherwise, it's just in that interview is the first time you're hearing yourself say these things. So think of it as an acting skill in many ways in terms of the preparation for the role or for the situation, because it's a sales meeting at the end of the day, and you've got to be, at your best. But the point this person made was about speaking from the heart as well. And that really resonated with me. And I think a good balance about you do you and having a great strength of preparation is a really good combination when it comes to interviews as well. Just a quick note on the preparation, even up to the last day, I would always use perhaps Google News or other news portals, Google the name of the organization in case there has been a very recent merger, acquisition, change, success they're publishing, something, that you can throw into even if it's the initial walking along the corridor to the interview room, just keep that research going right to the last minute. All of this really is about your personal brand. It's about how you're going to come across in your written word, how you speak and how you come across to people. Do those two things seem to align when they see you? Is this the person that I'm seeing on that CV, or is it totally different? So it's no good, again, going back to the CV, battling to get that perfect CV, getting lots of interviews and then falling over at the interview because you just haven't done the practice, or you're not speaking authentically, or you don't actually have the relevant background or the stories to give to the interviewer or the interviewers. And I've mentioned already, a strong brand will attract opportunities. This whole thing about being a magnet is okay. Some people possibly don't believe that. That's why they just go back and gravitate towards advertised roles. So this will take a little bit of time, weeks or months. Who is to say in anyone's individual job search? But I would always advocate entering into this branding, getting across more people's radar. That's a phrase I keep coming back to. You're not doing it as an ego trip. Getting across more people's radar is really important. How do you do it? By LinkedIn. That's the way. Create the brand, create some content, create new connections, and just keep going. If anything, be absolutely relentless about it. So we're going to come back into the room for sort of questions and discussion or comments, in a minute. So I would ask you to get some questions together for that. So we'll be finishing up very shortly now. So I hope that gives you a quick overview anyway. Any one of those subjects we could individually talk for an hour on, quite easily, because everything's tailored to you and it's very, very individual at the end of the day. So some of those things I've covered, think about those resilience, all those kind of positive mindsets and how you're feeling about things at the moment. Where are you in yourself as far as the job search is concerned? Is your mood or demeanor or resilience likely to transmit into an interview situation? If you were called for interview, all things worth talking about, whether it's with trusted friends, colleagues, coaches, of course, like us. But that's individual choice, and I think just make sure that you're covering most of those bases. And there could well be others. There'll be nuances, there'll be branches coming off of some of these. And maintaining a positive outlook. How do you do that? Surround yourself with positive people. Make sure you don't sit at your desk 8 hours a day, job searching. Go out, go for a walk, do whatever. Do you essentially, and make sure that you're giving yourself enough breaks. And keep that mindset that for every no, you're getting closer to the yes. And I really believe that. I really believe it's a strong, a strong reality with job search. So the links I mentioned, which again, I can't see the chat right now, but I'm assuming they're in the chat at the moment. These are here for benefit of the recording, and we will come back into the room in a second, and I hope that someone will be raising their hand swiftly. So a bit of a change to let you know about just before we do that. We've looked at our frequency and we've gone from weekly to 2 weekly, essentially. This is the last of the Zoom sessions as they are at the moment. Due to the way that LinkedIn promotes its own sort of embedded events, we've decided to look at their audio events where it's simply a sort of a one-to-many telephone conversation, if you like. So you can access these on your mobile or on a desktop. And we're going to be starting those on the 24th of July. Now, because we're moving then on a fortnightly basis into early August, middle of August, we all know it goes a bit quieter during that period of time, and people will take holidays, etc., that they will be more generalized sort of conversations over that period of time. But I may well give a little bit of a preamble about a subject of interest at the outset anyway. The other change is that rather than the early birds or messing up people's school runs or whatever we're doing in terms of timing them at 8:30, we're moving to 12 p.m. UK time, that is, as well. So when we get to then September, we'll circle back around to the hidden jobs market, the personal branding, the job interviews, the CVs, and run those as audio events every 2 weeks. So hope to see you at some of those. Okay, so I will stop the show shortly, and yeah, questions, great. Or if you've got comments you want to make, I'm more than happy to have a discussion about that as well. Okay. Thanks for bearing with, guys, there. That was probably a bit of a longer one than we've still got sort of, quarter of an hour, 20 minutes. I never mind taking a little bit longer and hanging around if people wish to do that. That's absolutely fine. So anybody want to be the brave one and raise their hand?
Okay.
Or just pitch in, Sylvia. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Now, I just really liked what you said about an interview as a sales process, and you're selling you, because I have a big interview coming up next week. So I think that, and I'm a bit tentative because I've never interviewed with someone that high in the organization. So it's a bit scary.
Got you. Yeah, got you. I mean, do you do any other preparation, as in, disappear somewhere quiet just before the interview and do any sort of centering or breathing or anything like that at all?
I mean, it is next week, so I have time to do that. But I have a call later on today I have a friend who was a global partner at a big 4 firm. So it's like, he's like, you're not scared of me. And I'm like, you're my friend. So, so basically I'm interviewing with him of a different company. So I was like, okay, what do I need to know? What kind of questions? Because it's different from all the questions that I've been answering before, in terms of like, I'll be leading a team. So it's a kind of a different level. And so this guy, I'm like, I don't even know what he wants from me. Or, And I don't think, had he not been coming in from London, I wouldn't have had to meet with him, but it just happens to be a timing thing that he's flying in from the US and he's like the global head. And I'm like, okay.
Got you, got you. Yeah, yeah. I mean, feel free to ping me a note on LinkedIn about
Okay.
any particular subjects you think might come up. Because what I tend to do sometimes, I'll go off to one of these sites where you can just record a quick little video response or something. I might do that for you. And so if you're thinking about, is it going to be more about managing people? Is it going to be more about leadership styles? Is it going to be more about the technical? So I don't know which sector or role you're talking about, but whatever that is, then yeah, just get a few of those in the bag, I would say, and just at least so you know what you're talking about. You know, the STAR format, which people talk about for CVs mainly, you know, situation, task, action, result. There are other acronyms, but I use that one. So think about that in the interview as well, just as a general sort of grounding piece, because if you find yourself, and I did, and then also hold on, I'm going on and on a bit here. How do I stop this? Just think about result. You know, that's the last part of the STAR piece. So think about the point you wanted to make when you started out with that piece, and then just finish it up. Because anyone at that very senior position, they usually expect and appreciate succinctness generally. Doesn't mean you have to clip it, you know, ridiculously so, but it just means that they like you to be. How would you describe yourself? Yeah, I'd say I think of probably three things I'd pick up there. Bum 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 da 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 dum bum 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 bum. Not saying you have to do this three things each time, but you can use that for at least one question, that kind of style and approach. And you want the person internally to be sort of going, okay, yeah, try it. So whatever you need to do, whether it's deep breathing, whatever it is beforehand, you know, getting yourself in that space. Yes, it's selling, but you've got to do you as well at the end of it. But drop me a line, you know, no strings. More than happy to pop a LinkedIn message back and forth, or if you've got my email, you know, you use that. Totally up to you, Sylvie.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Great question. Sorry, I'm just going to have a look and see if there's anything above.
Hey Steve, so this is Giuseppe. How you doing?
Oh, you've come up to a level view, Giuseppe. Good to see.
Yes, sorry, I was like on a phone. I was actually off a little bit. The broad question is that what if you've had multiple international experiences, and you've been told at executive level that this is too much. You're kind of like at that point that you're basically at the top of potentially at the very top of the pyramid, and that conversation becomes a little bit complicated. So you kind of like, oh, they ask you to scale down your CV at this point. You know, what you said about LinkedIn, I've been very active on it. We were discussing like geopolitics is one of the big things that at this time I'm in business development. I've been the chief business development of a company. I've been the head of innovation for a company. But sometimes like, oh, this is too much. And so how do you manage that part?
My gut reaction is it relates to what you're applying for, because if you did you say you were in senior sort of sales?
Well, like in business development, like global strategy, global business development, I like in innovation. So I've been the head of innovation for a company in the past. So
individual contributor or people responsibilities?
both
Okay.
ways. I have
Okay.
both ways. I worked in staff position, like, you know, having people not reporting to me, but having to impact. I've
Right.
had people like, you know, like directly reporting to me, even being the youngest of a team and the oldest of a team. So managing different generations. So those kind of
Yes.
like soft skills that you're talking about
Yes.
are like one of the highlights. I'll give you one. Sorry if I take a little time, but one of the highest achievements in my career was the wife of one of my direct reports that wrote me a message like, my husband has not been so motivated over the past 20 years prior to you changing his position and making him like, you know, really motivating and pushing him into something he was not expected. And, you know, this person was, let's say, closer to my father than to myself as an age. So I was like, I keep that as a dear memory of that. So, and I have other ones, but anyway, that's fun.
No.
Fun stories about business.
I'm with you. So I mean, and sometimes it's appropriate to share, you know, an example that might not necessarily be business if you get into that interview situation, which is another question. But I was going to say it's about the roles that you're looking at or the roles that you're applying for. You know, I'm not going to beat about the bush. There's always an element of, I mean, you look like a young man to me, but there can be an element of ageism in things, you know.
I appreciate that.
It's dressed up as something else. Now, again, I don't want to be flippant about that. With ageism or anything around that type of subject, we just have to kind of knuckle down and move on to the next opportunity, because you're never going to change the way one person thinks. So whether it's the hiring manager, the recruiters, it sounds like the kind of overqualified kind of syndrome, you know, that you're talking about there, really. So yeah, I always think, what is that word code for, you know, to some extent. So it could just be, yep, move on, move on, move on. The benefit of adopting some of these things where, and you may already be, apologies if you are, but adopting some of these LinkedIn strategies is that if you can get across more people's radar and get people coming to you, you kind of almost negate that whole, you're kind of going out doing all the door knocking. They're knocking on your door, and they've seen your profile, they've looked at all your achievements, and they've made a kind of a little bit of a judgment before they even make contact. So I would say make sure the roles are right that you're going for.
Yeah.
Make sure the seniority is right, and I wouldn't negotiate on that.
Okay. Well, I'll drop you a line on LinkedIn eventually with more questions, and if that's okay. And
that's no problem, Giuseppe. Yeah.
Yeah, Sylvia, what you're saying on the chat, it's exactly what people have told me. Like some people that I should be reporting to, they might be threatened. And so the problem is that how do you, I'm not there to threaten anybody. I'm like here to do the job and like show that I can be an asset on the organizations.
Yeah.
That's another conversation.
Yeah, no, fair enough. So, all right. Some of it's the dialogue we have with ourselves, isn't it? So that we're kind of having to come up with a rationale about why something's happened. And yes, I've certainly heard that one before. Again, what does it tell you about the company? What does it tell you about the relationship between the hiring manager or the recruiters and the company, if that kind of thing is really happening? So I assume you're familiar with the phrase kissing frogs. You have to kiss a few frogs with this whole kind of process. And I think that's where, going back to the beginning of what I was talking about, that strength and resilience is really, really important, because you have to just come away from, it's their loss, it's their loss. And I'm moving on to the next opportunity, and I'll move on to the next one, and I'll just keep being absolutely relentless about that. And I'll keep the same positive mindset, so that when I get into the interview, I haven't got little voices saying to me, oh God, there's going to be another one where they're threatened by me, or I'm too old, or so you haven't got all that going on, and just try and keep it as positive as you can. But I realize I'm giving kind of generic answers to very personalized situations and questions. So that's why I'm always more happy to get a chat booked in. If it's not about formally potentially engaging with us in career coaching, that's fine. If it is, use one of those links. But if it isn't, just send me a message on LinkedIn. We can do it that way. Or as I say, if you've got my email, you're welcome to use that. All right. Still got a little bit of time. I'm just going to go back up through the, make sure I've missed anything. I don't think.
Steve, thanks very much for running the session. It's been useful.
Thanks, David.
I guess my search has just started, so I'm kind of just sort of probably in this world where I'm looking at the advertised roles. So not quite reached out to too many networks for the hidden roles, but absolutely, I think there's probably a lot of work there that could certainly be done. One of the things I'm noticing on the advertised roles is, they're launched and they're, several hours in and they've already got 200 applicants, which is a bit of a strange thing, that there's 200 CFOs or CEOs that are waiting to sort of jump into a new role. Have you got any kind of feedback from these executive recruiters of how validated these 200 kind of plus applications are, and how many are just very speculative kind of, not probably as experienced individuals that are putting themselves forward to a role?
Yeah, I think that I can't speak to kind of so much as into who is applying for them, but I do know that recruiters are talking about longer timelines in terms of securing a new role now. Sometimes, for me, scarily longer than I would want to talk to people about. I mean, the people that I can only quote the people we work with, and 4, 5, 6 months might be quite average, but they're talking even longer than that, in terms of that time frame. But it's just, it is a scenario, the 100, the 200, the numbers of applicants that is always going to be there with these with any kind of advertised roles, and there are always going to be, and there are now more qualified and good candidates out there as well. So that it's always going to be that kind of market. To me, it is. Yes, you have to still apply for them. It's kind of one of those things where you have a kind of I can't stop myself, whatever it is, whether it's a quick apply or whatever it is, fair enough. But to me, it's even more important to start rising above that, or moving to the side of it, and actually going down this route where, okay, I'm going to treat myself like I'm a website that just needs to optimize myself, like get all my search engine optimization up to speed, but in a LinkedIn sense, so that more people are seeing me, more people know what I do, more people are going to come to me and approach me. And just going back to the start of what you said, I think that approach is, if you can adopt it and keep going on it, it's a really strong strategy. But it hasn't really changed. The feedback from recruiters about the numbers and who's applying for them. I think anyone who wasn't really appropriate for the roles just wouldn't, they probably wouldn't even hear from them again. The recruiters, I mean, they wouldn't even hear from them. But it's always going to be like that, and that's the scenario of advertised roles, essentially.
Yeah, one of the things I try to do is if I have seen a sort of a vast number, I try to make sure I'm connected to the recruiter, and I send them a personal note just to try and get a bit more noticed in that kind of 200 plus CVs that are pinged across to them.
There we go, exactly. And people sometimes will get a little bit bogged down with the ATS systems as well. And I think that particularly at senior level, the conversations I have would indicate that there is a strong element of a human being involved in that process still along the way. So, I do ask people not to get too kind of bogged down with that whole situation about ATS systems. But yes, certainly. We can send you. We've got a document on hidden jobs market, and perhaps a bit about thought leadership that we can send, something along those lines. But more than happy to have a chat as well, David. See where it takes us. It gives us the opportunity to get a bit more personalised about things. That's all really. But that's up to you.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Right. Okay. But I will just touch back onto what Sylvia said about the being threatened by aspect. It is something that does come up. It comes up throughout conversations we have all the time. That's why I think it's important to get that little personal job description written down. What are your non-negotiables? What is it that you want to do? Because it can be very easy to get sold again from a recruiter. They're doing their job, they outline a role, it all sounds very good. You start going down the path, you start investing the time and the energy into it, and then partway through, realizing either the company hasn't got the ethics you share, or you get to the interview and it's a little bit kind of off key. Something's a bit off key about it. So Durham, by the way, we're finishing up in a couple of minutes, but you will be able to see the recording. I know you've just come onto the call, but you will be able to see the recording as well. Quite a good amount of conversation this morning that we've had. So I would like to, I would like to just give it another minute or two to see if anyone's got any last minute pieces. You've got all the links in the chat. You can contact me, individually, or connect on LinkedIn if we're not already. If you've got my email, use that for any supplementary questions you might have. Other than that, if there are no more questions, I will let you lovely people get on with your morning.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Good luck with your interview, Sylvia.
Thank you.
Perfect. Yes, Sylvia.
Exactly. Good luck.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you,
so
everyone, and
much.
feel free to reach out on LinkedIn as well. So let's all share connections. That will be great.
Thank you.
Touch
Have
you
a good
soon.
day.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.